Hello my friends, this is Maltanan, welcome back. Today I got very exciting news for you. I finally finished my Youveelizer plugin, which I announced on my blog. If you go to the blog section or simply scroll down to the latest blog post in here, you will see a post that is entitled UV Mapping with Pixel Bender. You can learn what a UV mapping is, and here's a simple sample and what it allows you to do. Basically, this is a so-called UV pass rendered out of Cinema 4D, and then I simply apply a texture to this UV map and achieve this result in After Effects. That's what it is in a nutshell. And this tutorial will show you how it can be used and how it can improve your workflow. So sit back and enjoy. Here we are in After Effects. And just to show you the basic idea behind this technique, I'm gonna just grab this UV texture, which is just a square, and this is how the UV texture looks and works. Basically, it consists of two colors, which represent the coordinates of the texture on the 3D model. So basically, the green means, top left corner, red means bottom right corner, and so on and so on. And any transition in between means corresponding point on a model for the texture, of course. So I'm just gonna take a photo in here and turn off my texture, and as you can see, this is just a regular photo grabbed from iStock photo. Very nice photo, by the way. And here's the basic principle. First thing you need to know is that your texture should be the same size as your UV map that you're applying it to. So in this case, it should be square of the size of the composition, and that will be basically the case, I think, most of the time at least. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click Transform, Fit to Comp, and now pre-compose it. I'm gonna call it Coins Texture, just like that. I'm gonna turn it off for now, turn the UV map on, and apply my Youveelizer plugin. And here we go. Oh, I also have the UV mapper, but that's just like a test version I had and that I used for the blog post. So don't worry about that. This is the actual thing. So we're just going to apply it to the UV map like that. And now we can simply tell which texture we want to use. And we want to use Coins Texture. And here we go. As you can see, the texture is now applied. I'm just going to make some room here. And this is the basic thing. Of course, it looks exactly the same as the texture below at this point because the UV map is just a square, so nothing exciting in that. But I hope you can already see how useful this can be. So we're just going to run through the basic settings in here. We can switch the view mode, and basically this is what you want to do when you're setting things up. And we're going to turn the texture on, and of course, again, this looks exactly the same. But what this allows you to do is we've got those two control points, and we can simply crop the texture to the area that we're interested in. And maybe let's just pick this area. We don't really see it because it's half res right now, but you can see that I've got a nice rectangle that shows the area of interest in this case. Just make some room here. And now when I switch back to final result, you can see that this piece is now stretched over our entire UV map, and I can just grab those points and move them as I go and basically see the changes happening. Notice how fast this works. It's really great. Also, let's just reset it and go back to Coins Texture. We can tile the texture 2 times or 2.5 or whatever. On X and on Y, let's make it 2.5 as well. We can change the pattern of repetition. We can simply have it repeat or mirror in both axes, on the X and on the Y, as you can see. What else? We can offset the texture, and this is in percentage because this is basically using the texture coordinates. So if we're gonna move it 50%, then it means that the pattern starts at 50% of its width. Same here, 50% of its height. So that's how it works. We also have the flip UV parameter, which allows you to flip the coordinates if something didn't work out as you planned when you rendered it out from your 3D application. So let's just go back to 1 and 1, and you can see how that works. Flip X is gonna flip it on the X, obviously. Flip Y on the Y, and we can flip both axes as well. We also have this blue channel threshold parameter and blue channel replacement. Those are two parameters that you're probably not gonna use. I've included them because I just happened to had some cases where a little bit of blue channel appeared in the UV texture, which theoretically shouldn't happen. So you can just simply change the threshold and see how that affects your texturing. But I guess you will never ever have to use this. But just in case, let's see if this changes something on this texture. As you can see right now, here are just a little bit of blue, like we can see in the info palette here. Blue is 1, 2, 3. This theoretically shouldn't happen, but it does. So you can, just ignore those blues and just ignore everything that has any blue in it. But again, I don't think you'll have to use it. And sorry, by the way, you can choose a blue channel replacement method. You can either replace it with the UV map, or you can replace it with the texture. And in this case, again, we're gonna get the same result because the texture is now matching the UV map. But if we would, for example, tile it 10 times, then you see that it just replaces this with the texture. So that's it. Okay, let's just reset it to 1 and 1. And we also have the liquefier, which I don't think is gonna cause much change in this case because the UV map is basically a flat square. This really works nice on some shapes, which I'm gonna demonstrate in a second. Same with the view mode. We can view UV map or texture or final result, of course. And we also have alpha blending, which I will demonstrate in a second. So this is the basic idea behind this plugin, and this is what you can do with it. So let's just get rid of this and do something interesting. There are basically two uses for this plugin, either for visual effects and integrating your 3D models, with your footage a little bit better, or for motion graphics. But I guess that's the same with everything you do in After Effects, right? Either motion graphics or visual effects. So I got a piece of footage in here. I'm just gonna drop it in like that. I also have this guy rotoed out. So here's my roto mask. It's not the best roto mask ever because you're gonna see that we've got some dark edges in here and some noise in this place, but it won't matter really. And we've got this huge robot rendered out with alpha channel, of course. So basically this is how the robot looks. It's of course been match moved and model animated. Took a lot of time, but that's not the point in this tutorial. I'm just gonna put the robot in here and use inverted Luma matte on the robot. So basically here we have a very rough composite, which looks pretty nice anyway, but still it's pretty rough. And now the things that we can do with it is, of course, we can try to blend it better, color correct it, do all that stuff. But what if by design this robot is reflective and should really reflect the environment it's in? Well, this is where you would normally do it in 3D. You would probably shoot some high dynamic range images and, basically cast light on the robot using that. But we all know that it renders really slowly, although it generates beautiful results. But, in some cases you can do shortcuts. You don't have to do everything by the book. So in this case, we're actually gonna do the reflections in After Effects. And we're gonna use the Youveelizer in a little bit different way that it was designed to. Other than the robot render, I have the normal maps render as well. And as you can see, it doesn't look anything like the UV map, like different colors and everything. But it doesn't mean we can't use this. So let's see how the Youveelizer will work with normal maps instead of UV maps. So you get like two plugins in one. You can use it with UV maps and with normal maps. And with normal maps, it's great for adding reflections on your surface. So I'm just gonna get rid of the roto for now and get rid of this tracking mat. And I'm gonna pre-compose the robot with the normals. Let's call it robot, and go in here. And let's just have a look. This is the normal pass, and this is the usual render. So right now I'm going to apply the Youveelizer to this. And, you know, all sorts of strange things start to happen. But we can now try to cast the footage on this robot. Oh, and actually to do that, we need to grab this piece of footage as well. So I need it in this pre-comp. So I'm just going to paste it. As you can see, it's in here, but it's turned off, and that's totally fine. And right now, let's pick our footage as the texture. And the difference with you using UV map versus normal maps with this plugin is that the texture actually sticks to the object, right? Texture does not move unless it's animated, of course, but generally it doesn't move. But normal maps actually show you the direction in which a given pixel is looking from the camera point of view. There are exceptions, but, you know, we're not going to get into that. I assume that if you're working in 3D and you're interested in this plugin, you probably know what I'm talking about. So what will happen is that the texture we're applying will shift depending on the angle of the robot. So you can already see that how nice it looks on the chest. Like, not only the guy is moving because that's a moving footage, but it also reacts really nicely with the chest of the robot. So let's just render those few frames out and you'll see how that looks. It's really nice, and you don't really have to worry about the jagginess of this because it can be easily fixed, adding like a post fast blur on it, you know, with like radius of 1 or 2, or you can use vector blur, you know, depending on the look that you're trying to have. So basically, this is it, and it looks damn good. And now we're trying to blend it with our original robot, which is below, and let's try using overlay. And that's not bad, actually. Oh, and I think we need the fast blur and make it like 2 pixels or something like that. Yeah, and besides, this footage isn't, you know, top quality, so the robot should be blurred anyway a little bit. So let's just see how that looks. Well, that looks a lot better. And if we're gonna put the footage behind it, it's gonna be really, really nice. And also, what we can do is we have this liquefier parameter in here, and this is what actually liquefies the result. Basically, this is why I call it a liquefier. I can't really find a better name for it. Look what happens when I pump it up to 50%. It actually changes how the texture wraps around the object. So it's a really nice thing, but I have to warn you that the higher you pump up this value, the slower the render goes. So I usually don't do that unless I really want it to be very subtle, like 20%. That's totally acceptable. But other than that, it's going to be a little bit tricky. So we have our robot, which is cool. And I think we can now pre-compose the robot. So robot reflections. And again, from a mathematical point of view, this is not a proper way to do reflections. You've got tools for that in, you know, 3D and all that stuff. But on the other hand, human eye is really bad at judging whether or not a reflection is true. So if you take that into account, it doesn't really matter. You can get away with it in many occasions, and I did get away with it at many occasions. So I'm telling from my own experience. So we've got our robot, and hey, we can use another plugin of mine, which is light wrap. Yep. Let's apply the light wrap. And we can choose the background for our footage. That's right. Okay, yeah. Looks a lot better. And we're gonna, yeah, we can just twirl all of this down and check the settings. I don't think we need to change anything. See how the color matcher really matches our robot with the footage. I'm gonna turn it off. See, it has this green tint, and right now it's a little bit goldy, just like this whole piece of footage, which is a really nice feature. So make sure to check out light wrap as well. And I think we're gonna leave it like that and go back to our footage comp, turn on our footage, bring our roto mask to it, put it in here, and set the robot to Luma inverted. And here we go, a very rough composite, but done very fast. And as you can see, it looks really nice. Of course, what we should do, we should also add some noise, some motion blur and all that stuff. But this is not a 3D compositing tutorial. This is basically showing what the plugin can do for you if you're already doing compositing. So just notice how this guy is reflecting in the chest in here. And if you think that's not enough, you can simply just go back to the pre-comp and change the parameters, crop the texture, add some repeat tile, and all that stuff within the plugin. So you don't really need to apply any additional plugins. So let's take a look. Yeah, I think we can try to shift this a little bit. It's just so fun playing with this. Let's just go to this pre-comp and grab our robot, our normals, and try to maybe offset this a little bit. Or maybe let's just go here and maybe repeat it twice on the X and make it a mirror. No, that's no, doesn't look right. Unless we're gonna offset it, of course. We can try to see how that looks. Maybe 1.5 on the Y-axis and mirror as well. Let's see how that looks. No, that's way too much. Well, you can see how you can change the look of this, and we can just grab the texture, go to final result and change the texture, and just crop the texture a little bit, like make it something like this, and see how that changes the look. We now need to go back with the position offset. I'm sorry, I should be showing you some other stuff, but this is really so fun to do, and you can do it within After Effects and you can see the results instantly. You don't really have to go through all that rendering or even re-rendering process from 3D Studio Max or Cinema 4D or whatever. And by the way, basically every 3D package is capable of rendering UV passes and normal passes, so make sure to check that out, or just tell your 3D artist to do that from now on, because this will really make your life easier as a compositor or motion graphic artist. So that's it. Let's just have another look at our final composite. And again, we're using the Youveelizer to add reflections to the already rendered robot, plus we're using CE Light Wrap with color matching option turned on to match the color and light on the robot to the footage, to the environment. So it really makes it part of the scene. Okay, so that's it. And that's for the visual effects part of the tutorial. And now we're gonna focus on motion graphics. And this is actually a part of a project that I did. And let's just open up this comp, Cam 03. I'm gonna just close this down, and this is how the comp looks right now. we've got some book pages. They were animated in 3D Studio Max. Everything was composited, of course, here in After Effects. I'm not gonna go through how the composite is built. It looks pretty simple, but there's a bunch of pre-comps, bunch of footage. So, you know, a lot of things happening in here. But basically, what the client wanted is they wanted to be able to have something on the edges of the books. Let's just go forward a couple of frames. They wanted to have something on the edges of the books. The pages, of course, have the some kind of texture, but actually to be able to put something on the very edge of the page, we would have to make the pages really thick, and they're already pretty thick, as you can see. But to actually have something on them would require us to make the book pages even thicker. And we did try that, and it didn't look right. Plus, we needed to be able to change those textures on the fly to do some versioning for the client and for different versions of the finished spot. And this is, by the way, a spot for a sports encyclopedia. So we needed to be able to produce those videos very fast and make changes on the fly. So we basically had like 3, 4, 5 camera fly-throughs, like you've seen here. And for each camera fly-through, we had a specially rendered out UV pass, which looks like this. And actually, these are just the edges of the pages, and they are actually a little bit thicker. So the pages don't look so thick, but the edges of the pages with the UV map on them are actually much thicker. And if you take a look, they match up exactly with the pages. And they, you know, just go denser in this area, so you will be able to actually see what we're gonna apply here as a texture. So I'm gonna show you how the texture looks right now. So I'm just gonna go to book texture, and this is just a simple animation of a ski jumper jumping like that. Very, very simple thing. And now we're gonna apply that to these book pages. So to do that, we simply select our layer with the UV map on them. As you can see, this is just something like that. And we're applying Multenon's Youveelizer. Apply it like that, and change the texture to book texture. And here we go. As you can see, it takes the alpha channel along with the texture as well. And this is what I wanted to show you, the smart blending mode. We've got 4 blending modes for the alpha channel. We've got none, which basically fills everything else with black and non-transparent. We've got keep UV alpha, so it basically turns everything black, and you know, you can see what it does basically. We've got keep texture alpha, which in this case works very similar to the smart blending, but the smart blending actually have nice edges in here. So basically you want to use the smart blending option most of the time, and it's a default setting, by the way, so you don't have to think about it. The only thing you need to think about is to make your texture the same size as your comp, pre-comp it, and then choose it as a texture, and that will basically get you going. So let's take a look on how the final composite looks. I'm just gonna render out a few frames. As you can see, the pages are waving and moving, plus we have the camera move, which it's really hard to tell because we have no reference points, but actually the camera is moving to the right. So here we've got the ski jumper flying in, and being displayed on the pages. And by the way, if you want to see more of this spot, you can just go to my site or my Facebook fan page, and there's a demo reel of mine in there, so you can see parts of that spot in there. So okay, this is how it looks. Very cool. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So once again, let's just go through really quickly how this works. Here we have another example of a UV pass, and I'm gonna apply the texture from this ski jumper. So I'm just gonna bring this ski jumper in here. Let's just trim the comp and make sure that it has the same size. So transform, fit to comp, free comp, example texture, and apply Youveelizer to the UV map. And we're gonna pick example texture. You will notice that this looks a little bit awkward, but that's because this UV texture is low quality, really, so you have some noise in here. But as you saw in the previous example, it was really nice and smooth. So the other thing you need to pay attention to is that you should always work in at least 16 bits per channel. The best would be 32, and you have to render your UV maps in 16 or 32 bits as well. And here's the only known bug so far in Youveelizer. It doesn't really like open AXR format, and this is unfortunately due to how Pixel Blender works. At least that's my opinion, because I haven't found any other reason for it not to work. So basically, even though open AXR format is really sweet, because it has all the normal passes, UV passes, and all that stuff in one file, I would really recommend rendering out like a separate PNG sequence for normal maps and UV maps. And besides, it works faster than the AXR format. So this is it. Again, we can here we can see that we can flip it on the Y. Haha, sweet. Very nice. And I think we can now see how those blending modes work. As you can see, we are punching holes in the original alpha, really, because you can see that here's the edge that we had originally, right? So we were basically punching holes doing smart blend. But if we keep texture alpha, in this case, it's going to be the same. UV alpha is going to be like that, and none is going to be like that. So basically, again, try to keep the smart blend option turned on and usually work with final results. So I guess that's it. So this is how you can do quick versioning and texture replacement in your projects that involve some 3D graphics. Plus, you can achieve really nice results by adding reflections to your footage when you're compositing something 3D with live footage. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial and that you will enjoy my plugin and that you can see how much easier it's gonna be for you to actually do complex compositing and motion graphics in After Effects. Until next time, thanks for watching. Happy After Effecting.